A rugged paradise of rocky, untamed shorelines, dense temperate rainforests of ancient moss-draped trees, high peaks, eclectic communities, and a historic capital was why we took a trip to visit Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island is located in the northeastern Pacific Ocean and part of the Canadian province of British Columbia. We traveled in October and flew Air Canada, first stopping in Montreal and then to Vancouver. Since it was a long travel day, we stayed the night at the Fairmont in the airport, a hotel chain that we have come to truly love. Early the next morning, we grabbed a rental car, made a quick stop at Richmond Centre Mall, and then headed to catch our ferry from Vancouver Tassawasan to Victoria Schwartz Bay, the southern part of Vancouver Island. I purchased our tickets in advance because tickets with a vehicle do fill up quickly. I've included the website in the description. The trip was an hour and 35 minutes, and ferry costs with an SUV and 2 people can vary between $68 to $115 for a one-way ticket. Once we were parked in line to drive onto the ferry, we were pleasantly surprised to find a really nice market there, called the Tassawasan Quay Market. Inside was like a mini food hall at one end and gift shops at the other. I definitely recommend stopping before boarding the ferry. Once on board the ferry, you can stay inside your car, sit inside, or walk around the ferry. The ride is a scenic and relaxing cruise through several of the islands, and even in our gray and blustery weather, it's still made for a beautiful ride. We were staying in Victoria and at the Hotel Fairmont Empress, which was about a 40-minute drive from the ferry terminal. Victoria is British Columbia's historic capital and located on the southern tip of Vancouver Island. It was named after Queen Victoria by its British settlers, whose influences can still be felt throughout the city. Once a fort, Fort Victoria, found in today's Bastion Square, and was set up as a post for the Hudson's Bay Company as a fur trading post. Today, Victoria is a popular spot to visit, with the ocean at its doorstep and a majestic inner harbor, grand Victorian brick buildings that line the streets, a neo-Baroque parliament, and formal English gardens, this city is arguably one of Canada's most picturesque cities. I was excited to stay at the Hotel Fairmont Empress because we had just stayed at the Fairmont Banff Springs the month prior and absolutely loved it. The Hotel Fairmont Empress is so impressive as soon as you walk in. It was way more modern than the one in Banff Springs, but still had that luxurious castle quality about it. Inside the lobby, as soon as you walk in, the 2-ton floral-themed crystal chandelier that hovers nearly 20 feet in the air catches your eye. In fact, you just can't stop looking at it. It's amazing. We specifically requested our room, which was an ensuite corner room that faced the harbor, giving us a stunning view, along with a secondary room for Manny to do some work in. The Empress is one of the oldest hotels in Victoria and opened in 1908. It, like the Fairmont Banff Springs, was built by the Canadian Pacific Railway Company. Over the years, members of the British royal family, as well as many celebrities, have stayed at this hotel. The hotel just exudes glamour, and I was thrilled to be staying in it. After getting checked in, we were anxious to get a look at the city. Since we were in such a great location, we could see a lot by foot. We were lucky that it was such a gorgeous day out. We walked around the stunning inner harbor, checking out the boats, yachts, seaplanes, and the First Nations peoples' monuments and landmarks. We strolled across the street to the stunning Parliament building, which truly made you feel transported to the UK. The building was built in a neo-Baroque style and has a statue of Queen Victoria on its front lawn. It's pretty magnificent, and found out later that it even gets better at night. We then walked along the inner harbor and down a street or two until we came to the colorful Fisherman's Wharf. At the time of arrival, there wasn't a lot open, but we enjoyed walking the docks and checking out the colorful restaurants and shops. After that, we decided to go back to the harbor and visit a restaurant called the Steamship Bar and Grill to grab some dinner. We actually ate at this restaurant twice because the food was so good. I'll leave the link in the description. We decided to continue exploring and grabbed the car and headed for the historic Chinatown. The Chinatown of Victoria is the oldest Chinatown in Canada and the second oldest in North America after San Francisco. The next morning, we grabbed some coffee in a pretty little shopping center and headed out to explore some of the east coast of Vancouver Island. Some of the locations that we'd be stopping at were over 2 hours away. We took Highway 1 and made our first stop up a mountain at the Malahat Lookout. From there, we stopped at an old country market called Goats on a Roof. And that's because there were goats on the roof. The little community was quirky and eccentric, selling everything from pastries and sandwiches to children's toys and unique styled lights. It was built in the 1950s, and it is a must-stop landmark to see in Coombs.
Straight as an arrow flies, nowhere to be, no dreams to chase tonight. We've got time to waste, let's waste it
We continued down the same road until we came to McMillan Provincial Park, a park and walking trail of ancient 800-year-old Douglas firs and mossy damp green forest.
We've got time to waste, let's waste it right. We got time to waste, let's waste it right.
I kept seeing the red dress here, and tons hung throughout Vancouver Island, and I learned it's to bring awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous women. We backtracked a bit and stopped right outside the park to a lake that was so beautiful that we needed to stop and capture it. From there, we drove to Little Qualicum Falls Park, a park that encompasses the entire south shore of Cameron Lake. If you take the trail of the loop like I did, you can see the lower falls and upper falls in about an hour. Then we drove over to finally see the beach and stopped at Rathtrevor Beach Provincial Park, or we renamed it Bunny Beach. Two things about this beach that were so unique. For one, they had bunnies, and the biggest bunnies that I've ever seen. And two, the tide was so low at this beach that you could practically walk a mile out, and you were truly standing on the seafloor.
This is so crazy. This would all be underwater right now. So wild. I think I walked a mile, and that's how far their low tide is. So I couldn't even imagine during high tide or if they were actually getting a storm out here, but absolutely amazing and pretty cool to walk on the seafloor.
I don't think that I've ever been able to walk out so far on any beach's low tide before. The beach was strewn with driftwood and truly was a beautiful beach. From there, we continued back south a bit to a waterfront city park in the Nanaimo area called Piper's Lagoon Park. Here, there was a very small parking area and just a short walk to the shoreline. There were actually 2 lagoons in this area, and a short hike over a peninsula would take you to Piper's Lagoon. If you're looking for a nice, quiet, but scenic beach, this was definitely the place to visit. After that, we headed back to Victoria in hopes of arriving before dark. When we got back, we caught an amazing sunset on the harbor, truly stunning. And once it was dark, we headed over to Parliament to capture it, all elegantly lit up in white lights. The next morning, we were up early and made our first stop downtown Victoria at the Victoria Public Market at the Hudson. It was a cute little food hall, and we grabbed a coffee and split a breakfast sandwich, which of course included Canadian bacon. Our first real stop was at Goldstream at the Provincial Park off of Highway 1. I really wanted to quickly check out the abandoned train trestle, but there wasn't any signage that we could find for it, and where my GPS showed it was a very intimidating trail. So we decided to unfortunately skip it because we had a full day ahead of us. The plan for today was to do the west side of Vancouver Island. We headed next to Souk Potholes. We found some pretty waterfalls, but no potholes, and again, no signage. So we continued on our way in Souk and stumbled across a park that was supposed to be the best whale watching park in Vancouver Island, called Whiffin Spit Park. It's situated between the Souk Harbor and Juan de Fuca Strait, and it offers a scenic coastal walk along the shoreline. Unfortunately, we didn't see any orcas, but there were some noisy sea lions playing offshore in the water that you could hear totally and truly enjoying themselves. I highly recommend visiting this park. From there, we drove down Highway 14 until we arrived in the parking lot of Sheringham Point Lighthouse. So the one thing about the western side of the island, Highway 14 is basically up on a cliff, and then to get to everything, you have to climb down the trails. The trails are thick, damp, lush forest that are beautiful, but definitely intimidating. Many stayed up top to fly the drone, so I climbed down by myself, and I have to say, I was happy to hear voices around because I didn't know if there would be some animal friends also on the trail that I didn't want to bump into. So I was hoping the voices of the others maybe would scare them away. We were so lucky because we had such a nice day to see the lighthouse sparkle above the water. We then headed north towards some of the beaches that I had flagged. The road is narrow and lots of sharp turns, and even some one-car wooden suspension bridges. When we got to Mystic Beach, it was actually going to take too long to hike down, so we instead headed for Sandcut Beach. I really wanted to hit one of these beaches because they both had waterfalls on the beaches, which I thought would be magical to see. Sandcut Beach showed up on the map, but like many of the other beaches, there seemed to be no parking and you couldn't figure out how to get to it, which seemed to be an ongoing issue we were finding in Vancouver Island. Plus, there was limited cell service, so my phone kept cutting out. We ended up parking in the right place, a small lot labeled Jordan River Regional Park. We hiked through the thick trail and then we came to a gorgeous beach full of huge rocks that made your footing difficult. I saw on my map that the waterfall was still a distance away, so while Manny stayed to fly his drone, I was determined to find what I was looking for. So I hiked about 15 to 20 minutes south through the rough footing to finally find a magnificent waterfall. Now, due to the limited cell service, I couldn't call Manny to tell him that I had found the waterfall, and the sun was going down quickly, so after grabbing some amazing shots and video, I was headed back because I was worried about it becoming dark and us still needing to hike back uphill through the thick forest.
I don't know you like before. I can't tell what I stand tall for.
But I have to say that I was beyond elated to have seen this magnificent sight. And I highly recommend adding this to your list. I will leave the information in the description. It was pretty much dark at this point and we were cold and hungry. So we headed back to Victoria. For our last day in Vancouver Island, we decided to spend it in Victoria, taking a better look around. We took a short drive and ate at Bear and Joey, an Australian-inspired cafe. Manny had avocado toast with salmon, and I had a beautiful pikelet, which was an Australian pancake, my first ever, and it was amazing. From there we drove over to see the British Victorian architecture of Craigdarroch Castle Mansion. It was designated a National Historic Site of Canada due to its landmark status in Victoria. We continued on to see the Carr House, a National Historic Site and a childhood home of Canadian painter Emily Carr. After that, we headed back to the Empress to walk through the relaxing English gardens, and then over to Parliament.
I know grace. Come to be ashamed in my place. This is knowing where I'm from, where I.
The Bronze War Memorial is for the unknown soldier and was unveiled on July 12, 1925. The Parliament buildings were officially opened in February 1898. However, details, refinishing, additions, and upgrades were ongoing until 1915. The buildings are the official residence for the British Columbia Parliament to pass laws, and up top, you'll find the Captain Vancouver statue. And out front of Parliament, you will find a huge statue of Queen Victoria. As we approached the steps of Parliament, there was an emotional and beautiful memorial, from shoes to teddy bears, to recognize the recent findings of remains of hundreds of Indigenous children found in unmarked graves. The orange shirts were a symbol of residential school children and survivors. It was very powerful and really sad. From there, we walked over to the Confederation Fountain and Plaza, which actually features the British Columbia time capsule. The plaza was built in commemoration of Canada's centennial year of Confederation in 1967. Canada's coat of arms resides in front of the pouring water, and the falls are flanked on each side by the shields of Canada's 13 provinces and territories. Beneath each shield is the province or territory name and the year it joined Canada. After that, we walked over to Thunderbird Park, which is right next to Parliament and the Royal British Columbia Museum. The park was established in 1941 by the Indigenous peoples of Pacific Northwest Coast, and it is home to many totem poles and other First Nation monuments. From there, we decided to walk through the downtown area. On the way next to the Empress, there was an amazing flower garden shaped like an orca. We walked through historic Bastion Square, which marks the site where a portion of the fort once stood. You're never lost among the crowd with me. Never lost among the crowd with me. And then over to Four Fins for some oysters for happy hour, and to enjoy the scenery of the harbor. Following that, we walked around the harbor, just taking some pictures.
It's a furthest sun, the gun done for love. It's a pulsing shove. It's the sharpest cry. The here goes but why, where the desperate lie. Far from ever feeling lost with me, I'll push you back towards a land.
When we were finished, we headed into the bar area in the Empress for a bite to eat and a drink.
Stick with me and I will guarantee you're never lost among the crowd with me. Never lost among the crowd with me. Everywhere you go, I'll be.
I had this beautiful lavender lemonade drink that was amazing to even just look at.
Among the crowd with me.
The next day was our travel day home, and the weather was pretty ugly. We headed out early for the ferry, and then when we got to Vancouver, we headed to Granville Island for a quick bite to eat. Then drove through downtown Vancouver, stopping in Gastown to see the famous steam clock. The weather was so awful, so from there, we just headed to the airport. Vancouver Island was a mecca outdoor adventure for us, and we were so grateful that up until now, we had such nice weather. With only getting to explore the stunning southern part of the island and so much more to see, we know that we will definitely be back. See you next time.